This is Seth Beamer, and you're listening to the Pivot Points Music Cast on Fader. Pivot Points dissects the lives of artists at their most crucial intersections, investigating the trials of this insane career and how they are overcome. These are the stories of the crossroads that, for better or worse, shape us all into the people, friends, and musicians we're meant to be. Today, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the blues legend, AJ Fullerton. AJ and I actually met in Colorado, and ironically, we moved to Nashville within days of each other. We made a promise to each other that whoever, quote unquote, makes it first is buying the other Waffle House. Well, I'm excited to hear about everything AJ has been doing to make that happen and get some waffles out of me. But first, let's listen to his music. This first song is his highest charted song on Spotify, accumulating nearly 1 million streams. This is Good Times. AJ, good to see you, man.
Good to be here, man.
Yeah, thanks for being on the pod today. It's fun to have you. This is actually our first time, just so everyone listening knows, we keep going back and forth. We're like, let's hang. And then you're out of town, I'm out of town, which we shouldn't be doing that, having just moved to Nashville. But we're finally getting to hang in Nashville.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And for the record, if neither of us make it, we're still going to get Waffle House.
Oh, I love it. You know we will. Well, what's life been like, man? How's Nashville treating you?
I love it. I've been trying to get down here for longer than I'd like to admit. I actually lived in Memphis for a brief period of time, which was my first foray into Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
And, the trek eastbound has taken me longer than I'd like, but I'm finally living in Davidson County, and I'm thrilled about it.
When did Memphis happen? Because your bass player's in Memphis.
Funny enough, he just moved.
Oh, well, that's funny. Okay.
Yeah. I've got some friends in Memphis, and I started visiting there quite a bit. I had a couple random things that would bring me down that direction. I've always had interest in the Mississippi Delta blues, and so, keep going. Making a pilgrimage down to Memphis and northern Mississippi was always something on my radar. And little by little, just, I found myself wanting to live there and experience that, and I did it for a season, and it seemed like a really cool thing. And then more recently, I found myself drawn to Nashville as a songwriter. Because you're also just, kind of a renowned artist, really. So where does the songwriting, do you see yourself moving into that category more so, or because everyone comes to Nashville to be an artist, and you just said you want to be a songwriter. Where do both of those lie for you? Well, I guess to go back to my roots, I met somebody the other day that said he'd heard of me, or he said I've heard of your lore, and I'm like, I didn't realize I had lore.
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's interesting. I grew up in Montrose, Colorado, which for those of you that don't know, Colorado is on the western half, more agricultural, more rural. And from a young age, I was really into music, just as a listener.
Yeah.
I didn't really play anything till I was maybe 14, 15.
Okay.
But I had a huge record collection that I got mostly at yard sales and from my parents. And
I don't think I knew that you didn't even play until you were 14 or 15.
Oh.
You're an incredible player for only playing that long.
I just never had any interest in playing music. I just loved songs.
Very cool.
And so collecting CDs, vinyl, tapes, brief stint into 8 tracks before realizing it's a garbage format.
Yeah, right.
And so I think that love of music is what brought me into the realm of songwriting. I never really had any interest in being an instrumentalist.
Sure.
To me, guitar and instruments are just a means to an end of writing.
Oh, cool.
But more and more recently, I found that, I guess maybe it's not a bad thing to practice your instrument and get a little bit better at whatever it is you're doing, which for me is primarily guitar.
Yeah. Do you see yourself doing any of that here in Nashville, like studio work or studio guitar playing?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I have been doing, let's just say in the last maybe 6 or 7 years, I've gotten a lot more into the studio work, played on a few people's records, done a few tours as a side guy. a lot of times I find myself in these positions that I didn't start out looking for, but have kind of just built into the echelon of things that I do.
I feel like that's how life is, especially in music, man, where you just like, you never know where it's going to take you. You just never know who's going to ask you to do, especially being a bass player. It's like, I didn't plan on playing bass. I just got asked to play bass. And then all of a sudden I'm a bass player.
I know the feeling. I've tracked bass on a couple projects and, and it's always funny to me when something pops up and I'm listening to it. I'm like, oh yeah, I played bass on that. That's weird. That's
so funny. Yeah.
And more recently, as I've been writing, I've found myself with an overabundance of songs. And then, every now and then somebody I know will be like, oh, I need a song to record. And I've had some of my material covered by other artists.
Really?
My friend Tony Holiday, which I produced a record for him a few years back, a record called Motel Mississippi, which we tracked in Coldwater, Mississippi
Love it already.
at the Dickinson's home studio.
Wow.
And there was a song on that called Get By that was in my back catalog. It was just a song that I was like, I don't know if I'll ever use this.
Yeah.
And Tony ended up tracking it on that record, and I believe it was the #1 blues song on Sirius Radio Bluesville for like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 months.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that.
Just out of nowhere. You're like, this song you had in your back pocket, didn't know you were going to do anything with it, now becomes #1 on satellite radio.
Yeah, the #1 most played blues song for a hot minute, and I was kind of just like, huh.
Wow.
So now that I've moved to Nashville, everyone you meet says, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I've kind of done some soul searching. I think the answer I've been resting on is, well, I'm a songwriter, and I'm also primarily a slide guitar player, fingerstyle guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess more recently, I'm also a producer. That's sort of another hat that I've kind of fallen into.
Yeah. Are you producing anyone right now?
Well, I just finished up a project I'm really proud of. My friend Grant Sabin, who is a Colorado-based blues artist. He and I did a project last year that came out in December, his record Work, which I'm very proud of. Me, Grant, and my friend Forrest tracked it at Denver's infamous $2 million studio.
What's the $2 million studio?
It's Forrest's shed in his backyard.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Which, in full disclosure, we got to do some work together for a couple shows where Grant was opening up for you. So I know all about Grant and just what a wonderful artist he is. I mean, just amazing. And Forrest and I go back as well. Forrest, drummer, by the way, for those listening, dude, he gets some of, like, if he's just in a shed in his backyard, I mean, he gets some of the best drum tones I've ever heard.
Forrest Raup, for the record, is one of my favorite drummers out there.
Yeah.
The joke, if I need to extrapolate, is basically, I think we tracked the first song, and Grant and Forrest and I did a quick listen back, and I remember Grant said, man, this sounds like $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
I said, maybe 2 million.
Oh, my gosh.
So we decided it'd be funny if on the record we actually listed Forrest Shed as $2 million studio. And this may be the first time to the general public we're actually admitting that $2 million studio is actually just a shed in Rhino.
That's so funny, man. Does he get to record other people there then too, or he's just exclusively with you guys?
Well, Forrest just moved to Brooklyn.
Oh.
So $2 million studio is actually a defunct operation.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, I know we were going to talk a little bit about Grant later too, because I did want to get into him, and I know he's one of your artists you've been working with heavily. But let's talk about it right now. Like, what's up with Grant? Where did your relationship start, and how did you get to produce his record? I mean, did he come to you? Did you go to him? What's the story there?
Well, like most friendships, Grant and I's blues and musical bond started on an 1880s steam locomotive.
Okay. Like every relationship, every good relationship.
Yeah, we met, I believe it was 2016, maybe 2015. We met on the Durango Blues Train.
Oh, okay.
Which is a blues festival that takes place on a running locomotive.
Okay. Oh.
And
you're being for real.
I'm actually not kidding. Yeah.
Okay, I did not see that one coming.
And so he and I were both artists on the blues train, and I forget if it was actually on the train or just after it, somehow or another, we bumped into each other, and I'm like, hey, I'm AJ. Hey, I'm Grant. You know, we're close in age. We both are avid fans of hill country and Delta blues, and just kind of hit it off. And then,
Wow.
you know, that going back almost, I guess, 10 years now, give or take.
Oh, okay.
And we'd always said, man, we should work together. We should do a release, a project. And sometime in the last year or two, we really started talking seriously about it. And Grant and Forrest and I did a pickup gig together. And the next morning after the show, we were like, wow, that went really well. Why don't we just cut a record? Let's just make a recording.
Very cool.
And so no rehearsal, no real pre-production. I mean, Grant sent me a couple demos, but we just went to $2 Million Studio and set up some mics, and we did it live. We cut the entire record in a day. We did overdubs in half a day.
AJ, you kill me, man. Just with how you're just like, yeah, we just freaking did it. Like, what? Who does work like that? You're incredible. It's insane, man. And this is the most recent record that he put out. This is how you did this one, or this is another one?
Yeah. So this is the record that came out in December of last year.
Okay. Yeah. And remind me the name of the record.
The record is called Work.
It sounds like work, dude. Oh, my, one day's work in a $2 million studio. Dude, that's incredible. And so you guys came in with these songs that he wrote or that you wrote, or where did the songs come from?
All of the songs, as my memory serves, I have no notes, so, you know, fact check me if I'm wrong, but
yeah.
All of the songs we did were original, except for at the very end of the session, we're about to pack up, and I said, Grant, do me one favor. I love your cover of Robert Johnson's If I Had Possession of Judgment Day. And I just said, please track that. We may not keep it, but please just put it on the record.
Yeah.
And so at my request, there's one cover on the album.
Okay. Wow. But that's so cool that you guys are just like, let's rip it, dude. Let's just go in and do it.
Well, Grant's a pretty easigoing guy. Shout out to Grant Sabin. And, you know, Forrest and I have probably about a 10-year friendship as well.
Yeah.
We both met when I think we were both about 18 or 19. We met at a bar.
I didn't realize that young. Wow.
Yeah, and I just rolled in, and, you know, he was playing with another Colorado artist named Austin Young, and
Yep.
basically it was just like, actually Alex Goldberg was there too, and I, being probably somewhat naive, just, you know, was like, hey, I'm AJ, you want to be friends?
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's cool that when you have that history with musicians, you're able to do stuff like that where you're reading each other and you can pick up on things super fast. Whereas if you were going into a session like that with, you know, a drummer or another artist who like you just met, the sparks it's not so automatic. It can be, but it's just, you know what you're getting into with people that you go so far back with. So, wow, dude, I can't believe that though. So what's the process like that? Like, do you guys get in there and you say, here's the form, let's run it, boom, we're going? Like, how many reps do you do before you do an actual take? I'm assuming you guys are doing full takes live, like there's no overdubbing, you're just going. Like, what's the experience there?
Well, so that record was extremely unique. I think given the fact that Grant and I are both connoisseurs and big fans of the North Mississippi Hill Country genre, you know, a la Junior Kimbrough, R.L. Burnside, A.C. Payton, Robert Belfour, a lot of these artists, we both kind of had an idea of what we wanted it to sound like.
Okay.
And I'm thinking back on it, I'm pretty sure 80% of the record was one takes.
Wow.
Like, maybe we would talk about the intro or the ending before we tracked it, but really one take all the way through. I think there was one song with a little bit more tricky of a form that I think we did 2 or 3 takes, but broadly speaking, all one take. A couple overdubs here and there. I think maybe we doubled his vocals on a couple tracks or did a second guitar line.
Some little touch-ups.
Yeah.
Some little things.
There's one song that we we did a trumpet section that we ended up running through a Leslie.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, it's a live blues record.
That's so cool, man. That's so cool. Let's listen to a song off that record. What's a good one? What's one of your favorites here?
I love the entire record front to back.
Well, we're going to listen to it front to back. All right.
I think for today's audience, I would love to put on the track Sunny Days, which originally was a slow acoustic blues song.
Well, I'm excited to hear it, man. This is,
Actually, I do want to interject.
Yeah.
This track specifically, everybody in the room was, well, I should mention there was my manager, Corey, who did photography, me and Grant were floored because Forrest came up with the beat for this song pretty much on the spot. Again, it was an acoustic solo blues number, and he came up with this drum part that just boggled our minds.
Wow.
And again, I think he tracked it in one take. So this is Sunny Days. As a bass player, I tuned it to drop D, and I started the song on the 12th fret.
Oh.
On the low D string, low E. And then when the song drops, I go to the open D. It's like...
And just like hits. I love it when a song makes you just sink like that. It's just...
Exactly, just like... Whoop.
Oh, dude, that's so cool. Tell me about some other production things you're up to these days. I mean... Grant's the big one. Are you working with some other big artists? And talk to me about what else. Just talk to me what else you're up to, man.
Gosh.
Or actually, let's do this. I want to segue a little bit. You've got the artist hat. You've got the songwriter hat. You've got the producer hat. You've got the record label hat. What's going on there?
So I started a label a few years back. And it was kind of a joke at first. A lot of what I do starts off as, quasi, band humor.
Yeah.
Or, van humor is probably the better word. It's the stuff you do talking with your bandmates and just riffing on.
Oh, I love it, yeah.
And God, this was probably 2018, 2019. Me and my friend Jake Friel were in a van and just kind of bantering about getting signed and working with labels and how sometimes you hear horror stories about working with big labels and getting ripped off, and we're like, what if we started a label that just sounded sleazy, something that like if you sign with them and you get ripped off, you're like, yeah, well, naturally,
yeah,
And so we're like, well, what about like a Rolex, a guy selling Rolexes out of his trench coat, like, hey, get your Rolex here, and we're like, oh, Gitcha Records,
Gitcha,
yeah.
Oh my gosh,
it's a dumb joke.
It makes me think of like, you're signing your life away, like gotcha.
Yeah,
like, Gitcha.
Gotcha. Honestly, if I knew that it was become a real thing, I probably would have picked a better name. But
hey, well, you can always do a DBA. You can always do a DBA.
Actually, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna DBA Gitcha Records as Serious Record Label.
Oh, I think that's way better. Actually.
Yep. Just to show that we're serious.
Actually, what you do is you have another record label that's a DBA as that, but people don't know it's the same company, and you act like there's a feud between them.
Oh, that'd be fun.
There you go.
Well, the running joke as of like the last 6 months is Gitcha Record is not just 3 raccoons in a trench coat. We're actually a serious entity. But I'm sorry, we're sidetracking.
No, I love it, yeah.
So I started this label mostly as a joke, but then I realized, I was like, oh, well, it could be kind of a fun avenue for self-releases. I think our first project was an acoustic blues record called Fullerton and Friel, which is me and my friend Jake Friel doing like, Mississippi John Hurt, Piedmont acoustic covers.
Okay, yeah.
And then slowly we kind of put out that project, and then another one, and then another one, and then I forget who was the first like bona fide artist that wanted to be on the label. It might have been Sweet Virginia, but basically we're like, oh, I guess we do have a somewhat real label, and so we put out her project on Gitcha Records, and then another one, and I actually kind of forgot how many we're up to now, but it sort of became this thing where this joke label became a real entity kind of on accident.
Wow.
And now it's gotten to the point where like we have partners involved. It's not just me.
Oh my
Which
gosh.
I really, really appreciate, because I don't want to be running a record label by myself.
You've got tons else going on too, man. That's going to be tough.
Yeah. I just sort of, I wanted it, once it became real, to just be an entity that respects artists, helps them do their best work, get those projects out there and get them heard. And also, like, I'm not after people's publishing. I don't want really any part of the skeezy record label thing, even though it's intentionally supposed to sound like it.
Yeah, I love it.
I just wanted it to be a thing that helps elevate my friends and peers.
That's cool, man.
So,
and I'm curious, like, I don't know much about record labels, and I mean, when you think of record label these days, you just think, oh, they're basically a bank. They're giving you a loan and whatever. But it doesn't seem like that's your approach. Your approach isn't just throwing money at an artist and, distributing them. But what are some ways that you help your artists out?
Well, we're working up to the point where we can start throwing money at artists. We're just, we need to get the money first.
Yeah. Don't we all? Yeah. Yeah,
so
exactly.
If any financial benefactors want to bankroll Gitcha Records so we can start throwing money at people, But
I'm curious, like this first artist you mentioned, Sweet Virginia, one coming to you and then having you put out the record for her, which ended up being maybe there wasn't even the original intent for that, but then you're like, oh, I do have this record label. Let's do it together. Like why with the record label, I guess? What's the reasoning?
The easy answer, all jokes aside, is having been doing this music business thing since I was like 16.
Yeah.
I started gigging when I was probably 15. I picked up guitar. Maybe a month into playing, I started booking like gigs
at like real venues.
Oh yeah, like bars.
Oh my gosh.
So I mean, I haven't really. I had a brief stint right after high school where I had a day job, but I've just been doing music full time.
That's crazy, man.
All of my adult life.
Wow, I don't think I realized that, but
it's been a wild journey. So I guess to not get too off kilter, I realized that there's certain things I've learned, mostly the hard way, about the music business, about releasing records and all that stuff that some of my friends and peers maybe weren't as experienced with, and I realized that there's elements of that I can use to help them achieve their release or get their music out there.
Yeah.
A friend actually recently asked me what I feel like being a producer is in the music business.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot of ways you could define that.
Yeah.
For more like, hip hop or house music, like a producer or somebody that makes beats.
Yeah.
Or actually does the whole thing in house. And then you look at somebody like Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
Who doesn't even really like work a DAW. He knows what he likes and he achieves the results by just being confident in his intuition.
Sure.
And the best way I describe being a producer to people is it's kind of like just being a project manager.
Yeah.
It can be keeping it on budget, making sure you're hiring the right people, making sure you book the right studio.
So are you, for the artists that are on your label, are you producing all of these artists?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
And I actually really wanted to make a definitive line in the sand that Gitcha Records is not just like my passion project. It's not just like my ego-driven sandbox.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
There's a couple artists on it that I had nothing to do with their project.
Cool.
I just basically, they came to me maybe, or I came to them and we were talking and they had questions about releasing their music, or they wanted some advice about distribution and marketing.
Yeah.
And like those are actually some of my favorite projects because I can be more objective.
Yeah. You're not so close to it that you can just say this is exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah. And it's kind of like on a production gig, I actually like it more if I'm not playing on it.
Oh, okay.
If there's sessions where if I'm playing guitar or playing bass, you can really quickly get too close to it.
Sure.
And your objectivity suffers because of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny, back to the producer thing though. I think that was a big thing for me in the just starting in the industry was like, oh, you have a producer or the producer role. Like it sounds cool, right? It's like, oh yeah, my producer. But it's like, what the hell does that mean? And I think at first I thought it meant, just from my experience of like some of my first experiences of working with a producer, I mean, we were doing pre-production and rearranging songs and, defining parts and all of that. And so I thought, oh, well, that's what a producer is someone who like reworks the song. And then you kind of get down the road and you realize, well, that's not always what that means.
Yeah.
It's so ambiguous, this producer role. Like, what is it? And you're right. You have guys like Rick Rubin. Like Rick Rubin probably just like listens and goes, actually, it needs to go to this chord, or actually it needs to feel like this, or actually, but like, okay, like, what does that mean? And then you got other producers who are like, okay, I'm sitting with you in the room and I'm tracking everything and getting your opinion on it. Or you got other, it's just all these different avenues to be the same kind of role.
Yeah.
I just think that's interesting that you bring that up. And I'm sure with all of your artists who you do produce, it's probably different every time with each one of them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's no right or wrong answer, to how to make a record.
Mm.
I think the only wrong answer to making a record is not finishing it and not releasing it.
Mm.
It always bums me out when I have a friend or a colleague that like has a finished project or a nearly finished project and abandons it or never releases it.
Yeah.
Because if it's worth recording and if it's worth putting time into, it's worth putting out into the world.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there've been a multitude of a number of methodologies that go into producing a record. Like I don't want to come off as one of those guys that I'm like, no, we just do it live and whatever happens happens. There've definitely been a few projects where we've done some serious pre-production, charts, rearrangements.
Yeah.
But they were on projects where it called for it.
Sure.
If you're making a blues record with 3 dudes in a shed,
yeah, then yeah, just go do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you mentioned never releasing it. Do you find, I don't even know how to word this, but because I'm actually in that state right now where I have some songs that are waiting to be released. I know I'm going to do it, but I think as an artist, sometimes I get done with a project and into the final, I get the masters done, everything's done. And then releasing it is just another big step that I don't even feel like I have the energy for, or like, there's always this thing in your head, like it's not even going to do well. And, you want to make the perfect plan, but there's no perfect plan. And then how do you get past that? And how do you help out your artists with that kind of, I'm sure all kinds of people go through that. What's your thought process on like, does there need to be a release strategy, or is it just like fucking put it out? Who cares? I'm
going to make a callback to before we actually started tracking. Seth and I were talking about social anxiety.
Yeah.
And how to deal with that in situations where you are feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think the best way to do it is just to say, like, if you're at a bar or you're at a venue and you're saying to yourself, I feel kind of uncomfortable, which is not dissimilar to releasing a record where you say it's done, but I'm still feeling a little hesitant about releasing it. Acknowledge you're feeling a little hesitant and still just go through with it.
Love it. Yeah.
I think all artists, or at least I understand where you're coming from. There have been projects that I've finished where I'm like, oh shoot, should I put this out?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you just got to do it. You got to just go for it and acknowledge that you're still a little weary about what people are going to think.
Yeah.
But it's better to put it out there and just do it than to not have done it and always wonder if you should have.
For sure. I want to listen to another one of your songs, man. We're going to pull this up. I want to talk about Almost There and this song, where it came from. How did you release it? All of those things. Talk to me about Almost There.
Well, this song is kind of a nice example of one of the two extremes I find as a songwriter. When it comes to writing a song, I feel like it either happens immediately, like the song comes to you, verses, choruses, everything, chords, and it's done in a minute, or like it takes days, weeks, years,
Sure, yeah.
I wrote this song. I couldn't have taken me more than 5 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I just sat down. I kind of heard the chords in my head, plunked it out. It's an open C. And I don't know. Sometimes there's a moment that hits you so hard you have to just get it down.
Yeah.
And it was at a weird time in my life. I was feeling a little bit disjunct, a little bit, I don't know, hopeless maybe. I think, not that that's an uncommon thing in the music industry.
Totally.
And this song came out of that moment that, some of the lyrics are a little, about being downtrodden, or a little bit like you're losing it, but it doesn't feel that way, maybe is a good way to describe it. It feels almost hopeful. I like writing songs where what the words mean at face value aren't necessarily the internal meaning,
Okay.
Almost There is a song where it's like, even if it was written from a place of desperation and giving up, you could almost look at it like almost there to being past that, or almost there to the place you want to be.
I was going to say, do you find yourself writing? I've had, just through talks with artists on this show, It's funny. Some artists will write about how they're feeling in that moment, and they'll write to that emotion, which I'm one of those people 100%. I will write exactly what is on my mind. Whereas some artists will write to how they want to feel. You know, like if they're down in the dumps, they're going to write the opposite and write a really happy song. Or if they're really happy, they might write a really sad song because they just want to feel a little bit more of that emotion. Not that they want to be unhappy, but you get what I'm saying. Do you find yourself being in that camp then?
You know, this is kind of an esoteric answer, but I feel like oftentimes I'll write a song and I'll figure out what it means later.
Dude, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I love it. Yep. I hear that.
I feel like more than anything, I'm just kind of channeling a thing that's happening. And then oftentimes, like, maybe a good example. So Good Times and Almost There came off of a record I did called Closer.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came time to title that record, I had a really tough time. I thought about it for probably 2 weeks. Every title I came up with felt wrong, felt cliche.
Yeah.
And so I started analyzing the songs in order. I mean, the key, the lyrics, the melodies, trying to figure out a common theme.
Mm.
And I realized that all 3 or 4 of the songs on that record used the lyric Closer.
Oh.
Totally unintentionally.
Yeah, sure.
You know? And the sonic character of that record was a lot different than the record I did a few years before. And it made me realize that every project I'm working on is a step closer to where I want to be as an artist.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, like, there were these little clues hidden in the lyrics that I never intended to be there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, at least for me, maybe not for every artist, the meaning, the intention, all that stuff is buried in the song, and it's almost like you have to unpack that later.
Dude, that's really cool. That's so cool. And I love how it's just how it was hidden inside there. That's so awesome, man. Well, let's listen to it off of the record Closer, which everyone go check out the record. But this song is called Almost There. I'll be honest, AJ, I'm not a blues guy.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with I'm not familiar with the world. Talk to me about where do your influences come from? Because I feel like if you're a huge blues head, you weren't listening to Blink-182 growing up like me. You know? Who are you listening to, man?
Well, it's funny you say that because I went through a lot of musical microcosms.
Oh, yeah?
Again, before I was a guitar player, I was just a record enthusiast. My parents taught me how to use a turntable, and I was like 4.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had the stereo hi-fi in the living room, and I remember being very, very young, and my mom and dad were like, and this is how you pick the needle up, and you put it down real gently. And
oh, cool.
I mean, most of my early tastes stemmed from my parents' record collections, which is primarily like soul, R&B, classic rock, blues, Delta blues, Chicago blues. And so that was like my starting point. Cool. I went through a period of time where I was like, man, you know, pop punk is really cool. And oh man, like punk is really cool. And metal's pretty cool. And kind of just went through this whole journey of discovering different genres, big band and jazz and classical. I mean, like...
Well, hold on then. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How did you land on being a blues artist? When you started playing music, was that intentional, or is that just what came out and that just how it was a natural thing? Or did you intentionally go, I want to play the blues, man?
Well, so I should really preface my guitar playing started with my dad.
Okay.
He came home one day and he's like, I think you could use a hobby.
He's like, you're playing too many video games, dude. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, kind of. I grew up in a small town. You know, when you live in a small town, you get up to small town antics. And
yeah,
again, I was probably 14, 15. He just said, I think you could use a hobby. You should try guitar. He played guitar.
Okay.
And he was really into fingerstyle blues, Mississippi John Hurt, a lot of the Piedmont stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think he taught me my first couple of chords. He informed my early taste. And, you know, I grew up listening to a lot of blues around the house. We're talking the Gitcha Records stuff, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Albert Collins, you know, if you want to start getting more of the 80s stuff. And so I always liked blues a lot, and really the style of it resonated with me. But, you know, into my adult years, I like almost anything. You know, I don't even feel like all the time I really identify with some of the modern blues players or blues enthusiasts, just because, I'm not a very trad player, not a very traditional player, outside of like some of the Delta forms.
Okay.
There's so many people out there these days that will take like Chicago blues stuff, or more like the stuff that if you say blues, a lot of people will think of, you know. Like, I'm not really of that vein of, or school of learning.
I mean,
you know?
Just from an outsider, not being a blues guy, but I would say your writing in general is very, very pop, like, you know, very, very accessible. If we are saying, oh, he's a blues player, for those listening, if you don't like the blues, no, you'll like AJ Fullerton, because he's just got that accessible writing. You know what I'm saying? Or that accessible
thanks,
sound.
Man. I think a lot of that stems from my influences, which are, you know, a lot of the classic guys. But, you know, people ask me all the time, like, who's your favorite guitar player? Which is a corny question, you know?
Yeah.
I love Ry Cooder. He's a slide guitar player, but more than that, he's a songwriter.
Okay.
He's a producer. I like artists that are really song based, you know, more so than flashy, shreddy. I don't know.
No, I hear you. It's more about the song. It's about the essence of the whole package. It's not about the any individual piece of it. Yeah.
And like I said at the start of this, I feel like for me, being an instrumentalist is a means to an end of achieving a song and a record at some point, you know, like, it's kind of part of the process.
Was it Roy Cooder? Is that who you said?
Ry
Cooder.
Yeah,
Ry Cooder. I'm sorry. Talk to me about Ry Cooder, and like, what are some things that you enjoy from him? And maybe we can listen to one of his songs. Yeah,
man. I was just actually listening to him this morning on the way over here.
Oh, yeah? You said he's from the 80s?
Well, so Ry Cooder, I feel like I'm going to do a kind of a poor job summarizing his career. If anyone doesn't know Ry Cooder.
Well, it sounds like he's AJ Fullerton version 1. If songwriter, guitarist, slide player, producer, like... What?
I would say in a large degree, Ry Cooder was one of the people that when I discovered his music, I was kind of flabbergasted.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he worked with and influenced some of the greatest artists of the last, 50 years. And also his solo material it's a deep well, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so Ry Cooder, if you've ever heard of the Buena Vista Social Club, that's his work, which is a phenomenal record celebrating Cuban music.
Oh.
He also has a few releases that are more, let's say Latin in influence. He worked with the Rolling Stones. He did a lot of session work.
Whoa.
He did some soundtrack stuff. I mean, the well of Ry Cooder's catalog is almost infinitely deep.
Yeah. As
well as, he celebrated a lot of the artists that I really appreciate. He's covered some stuff by like Sleepy John Estes. I think he worked with John Lee Hooker. I mean, I guess for me, Ry Cooder is an artist that shows that you can be a guitar player. You can also be a session guy. You can also be a producer. You can also do all these things, be a songwriter.
Yeah.
And when I found out that there were people that have done that in the past, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
I always just kind of thought, well, you could be like Duane Allman. You could be a guitar player that plays some sick licks, or, you could be Jimi Hendrix, or, a lot of the stuff when you're a teenager, you hear about these guitar heroes and you just think like, wow, that guy's really good at guitar.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But then to grow older and find out that there are these people that like maybe worked with your heroes that added a little bit of influence, a little bit of whatever, and then also when I found out what a producer was, I was like, whoa, you can just like work on a project and maybe not even play on it, but just be there.
Just be a part of it.
Yeah. And then from Ry Cooder, I mean, there's all these other artists that have kind of followed in his footsteps. One of my other favorite artists in the more contemporary vein is a guy named Blake Mills. Blake is a huge hero of mine. Again, producer, guitarist, songwriter. Or there's a guy in Canada I really, really enjoy the playings of, a guy named Garrett Mason.
Okay.
I like very unconventional guitar players. Maybe that's a nice way to summarize this.
Yeah. Well,
this
it sounds
thing.
like, especially with Ry Cooder, it's like a guy who you know, kind of similar to you, where if he's working with Rolling Stones, I mean, this guy is not bound to one genre or one kind of sound. It sounds like he's has many influences, a jack of all trades kind of guy, similar to how you resonate. So,
well, and I guess like I went down the rabbit hole as a teenager of discovering what guitar-driven music is.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like shreddy, high gain, all these things that people, when they think of like lead guitar or they think of a guitar player, they kind of have this idea of like rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I like that, but I also like weird guitar. Yeah. I like clanky and clunky and like sort of odd sounding guitar. If you're a guitar player, I like out of phase stuff, or I like flat wounds.
Huh. Okay.
I like guitar that like is kind of unconventional.
Yeah.
And again, if you're an instrumentalist, I like open tunings a lot.
Yeah. See, this is where the blues part of you comes out, because this is like very like just down and dirty. I love it, just kind of weird, just kind of like, that's just to me the attitude. I love it.
Well, I had a guy at the show the other night. He was like, "Well, I like your playing. Are you an open tuning guy, or do you play in standard?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'll play in any tuning." To give you an idea, like I play in standard tuning. I'll play in open tunings, which are just guitar tunings to a major chord or minor chord.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple songs, one on my last record that's just in a tuning I made up.
Okay.
You just whatever.
And so did you do that because you needed to get a certain line, or do you do that just because you're like, let's just see?
Well, different tonalities for me as a writer inform different ideas.
Totally.
And there was one song on the record, if you want to, listen to it on your own time, there's a tune on there called Humility that I really wanted to do an alternating bass line thing, but I was in standard tuning, and so I just kind of tweaked it so that I could achieve that and also get some strange voicings that you couldn't get in another tuning.
Oh, okay.
And just kind of went with it.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Dang, man. Talk to me about, I really wanted to lead us here, and I'm sorry I didn't, but let's go back to Ry Cooder just for a second. I want to listen to maybe something, because he's been so influential on your life. What's something that, like a song that we should listen to by Ry Cooder? What's one that's maybe a big part of you? What were you listening to this morning?
He's got so many great records. I mean, I was listening to a record called Mambo Sinuento. Honestly, for anyone that's just getting into his catalog, his work with the Buena Vista Social Club is timeless. I think it won a Grammy. Maybe fact check me.
Okay.
Let me actually think for a second. I don't. This is like a very important topic for me. I want to make sure I'm not fucking this up.
You're like, I got to make sure we do the right song here.
Well, and again, he's released so many records. I want to say his career started in the 60s.
Wow.
And he's still active today. So,
oh, no way.
One of my favorite songs from Ry Cooder is an instrumental number called I Think It's Going to Work Out Fine.
Oh, I Think It's Going to Work Out Fine. Instrumental.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's check it out. This is
I Think It's Going to Work Out Fine by Ry Cooder.
Why did you pick a instrumental song?
Well,
or why was it because of that, or just because this song resonated with you, or what's the deal?
One of the reasons why I like this song is I think it showed me that the guitar can be used as a highly melodic instrument and not just as a means for shredding.
Yeah.
Which again, as a teenager or someone growing up, you get exposed to like a lot of the tropes of guitar music, AC/DC, Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all great artists. But to me, listening to someone like Ry Cooder, and especially that song, it was like, whoa, you can use guitar to be a melodic instrument or something that creates tones and textures that's not just a Les Paul through a Marshall shredding.
Sure.
Yeah. And to me, that was something where, like, as a songwriter, it opened up all these new avenues of like tonal possibilities and ways to use the guitar as more of an instrument of creation versus just an instrument to create stereotypical tones.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. Well, thanks for sharing that one. I want to dive into some of this new stuff that you have going on. You're getting ready to release a new song.
Working on a new record.
Working on a new record.
Yeah.
You're always working on music though. So, and I want to get to talking about that. I'd be remiss if we didn't bring up this new project that you have with Lauren, though. And talk to me about this new project. You showed me a song right before we started recording, and I really wish that I could just share it with all of you because it sounds so good. But what's this new project, and how many projects do you have where you're, kind of spearheading? And I don't know if you both are spearheading this, but where you're a full-time member. Do you have some other projects like that? And talk to me about this one with Lauren.
Well, I'll admit that I'm a habitual project taker honor.
Oh, okay.
So I think currently this project with our mutual friend Lauren Freehoff is there's an EP we're working on. I'm very excited about. There's another record with my friend Tim Carmen of Canyon Lights and Parlor Greens, both great bands you should check out.
Cool.
Tim Carmen and I have a project that we're working on, and then of course this new record of mine that's coming out. So that's at least 3.
Yeah.
I think there might be 1 or 2 others. I have a dedicated project list at home that keeps me on topic.
Wow, though. Wow. Well, talk to me a little bit about Lauren, though, and when is that debuting and all of that?
So I met Lauren through our mutual friend, Andy Sitto, and I've been a big fan of what she's doing. She's a phenomenal songwriter, vocalist, guitar player, piano player.
Yep.
And we work together a bit. She does backing vocals on some of my material. And I believe at one point I just said we should try writing together sometime. She's such a strong writer that I thought it might yield some cool results, and we got together and wrote some tunes.
Yeah.
A couple of which were like, these have potential. We should record these.
Yeah.
And basically we went to the studio the one day you were there.
I was there, man.
And we tracked
Magic.
4 songs, 3 originals and 1 cover.
Yeah, and so we're starting there. We're starting with 3 originals, 1 cover, and we'll see what happens after that. I just wanted to bring it up because it's just something that I'm really excited about that you're working on, and I think it's going to be great. So that's all it was.
I'm glad you were a part of it too.
Yeah, we got some videos that we need to finish, bro. We got to finish these videos. I'm like, they're burning a hole on my hard drive because I'm like, I just want to like pull them up, and I guess I could work on them
off
whenever,
the record. Let's hang next week or whatever and talk about it this week.
Yeah, we definitely will. Yeah, let's do it.
So Lauren's project, Tim and I's project. There may be a few others. I try to only really focus on one at a time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you get too disjunct.
But then you also have your solo stuff that you're doing, or your new stuff, and you have a song coming out. Actually, the day that this airs, you will have a song out on that day. And talk to me about that song. And it sounds like that's a precursor to some more things.
Yeah, so there's a new record coming out that I've been working on for a while. I am sometimes bad about letting projects linger longer than I should.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I've been working on this record, which is really more of a songwriter record. I would not call it a blues record at all.
Okay.
There's really nothing blues about it, which I like.
Yeah, very cool.
I feel like being pigeonholed in one genre is not something that I would feel comfortable doing in my career. And so this record has been a culmination of a number of years and a number of collaborations with a lot of my friends. And this song called The Wild Piece is the first single that we're releasing on Gitcha Records. And it's actually, I believe, one of the only tracks on the record that's not original. It's a cover.
Is this your first release on your own label?
I have signed one of my records as a back catalog re-release.
Okay.
But this will be the first original material of mine on my label, correct?
Wow. This is a big step then.
Well, what's funny is we released a graphic the other day on the label's Instagram. And again, we being me and the people that are running the label.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like a few of my friends that know more about the label were giving me some grief because they're like, wow, you finally joined your own label.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you know the backstory. But I mean, like, there's so much work that goes into the back of that, too. It's like, oh, yeah, you can, like, say, oh, you just made a post. But, like, well, no, this is, like, a long time coming. This is a step not only of, like, it means more than just saying, oh, I'm releasing a song on my own record label, because I think what it really stands for is it says, I believe in this label, right? I believe in it so much that I'm willing to put my own career on the line and put my own songs out on it.
Absolutely. And I think I think one of the funny things is like I've had conversations with a few artists here and there, not necessarily people on the label, people thinking about joining the label or people thinking about, you know, collaborating in some capacity. And I've had it asked a couple times, like, are you on the label? And you know, in the past I would say no, but it's something I'm looking at, or, you know, I believe in the label in a sense as if I were on it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's an inferior avenue of releasing music.
No, totally.
So, you know, some might say now, like, I truly do stand behind it to the same capacity that, like, it's a label that I feel comfortable releasing my own material on because of the fact that it's, whether I like it or not, it's a very serious, real entity now.
Yeah, no, I love it, dude. I love the story and how it came together, and it sounds like this is truly only the beginning. And I'm excited to see what else comes of it, of this label and the artists that you choose and this new release.
It's a song I'm actually extremely excited about too. I don't do a lot of covers.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a couple on past albums. Andy Sito and I have done a couple.
Yeah, that's
another
right.
mutual friend.
That's right. Yeah.
We've done a couple covers, but I'm pretty choosy about what songs I get behind and release that aren't my own.
So who originally did this one? The Wild Piece. Who did this?
It's a very obscure tune.
Okay.
Matter of fact, as far as I know, there's only one place you can hear the original online.
Oh.
Which is on a memorial record for a guy named John Alex Mason, who is a Colorado artist.
Okay.
This record came out some years ago, and I discovered it, I think, on YouTube.
Okay.
It might be on Spotify, and it might be on like Amazon Music, but like the only place I've heard it personally is on YouTube, and it's off this memorial record, and it's by this guy named Dave Gallagher, I believe it's pronounced.
But this isn't Sweetwater's Dave Gallagher.
I don't believe so.
You know who I'm talking about, though, right?
Yeah, I think I do.
Isn't it Dave Gallagher?
Well, my Sweetwater guy is named Eric, so I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, we all have our own Sweetwater guy, but I'm talking about the YouTube Sweetwater guy. You know him?
I believe I do know the guy you're talking about.
Is it Dave Gallagher? It's something Gallagher. That's cracking me up, though.
Shout out to Eric from Sweetwater. He called me last week just checking in, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric from Sweetwater.
Yeah, no, it's a really obscure tune, and honestly, it was one of those songs that really resonated with me for years and years, and I found myself at a certain point feeling like I wanted to do a version of it.
Cool.
It's a sort of a beautiful tune. To my interpretation of it, I don't want to speak for, you know, Dave's original writing of it, but to me, it's a song about death and a song about, well, it's a song about life and the eventual prospect of where you go afterwards.
Mm.
And the metaphors that he used in the writing of it really hit me in a way that I felt like I wanted to maybe do my own interpretation of it. And it's honestly, my version of it is extremely different than the original. So,
okay. Well, cool. I'm going to have to go find that, the original somewhere deep on YouTube, so that we can compare. But I'm excited to listen to it. So this is the debut here today. You can go find it anywhere on Spotify. Go stream it. But this is The Wild Piece. Dude, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being here and for just all of your insight. And I mean, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Any shows coming up? What are you doing in Nashville, man? Anything coming up in Nash?
Well, man, right now, as a new Nashville resident, I'm just getting to know folks, getting to see what the town's all about, making friends. Cool. I'll have some shows coming up this summer. Nothing announced just as of yet, but keep an eye out for new singles coming up for the new record.
Yeah.
Please check out Gitcha Records, which is just gitcharecords.com. We have a couple real exciting releases coming up.
That's just so people know, GITCHA.
Correct.
All right.
And then if you want to follow me, it's just ajfullerton.com or on all social media, AJ Fullerton Music.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here, AJ. And yeah, stoked to be here in town with you.
Dude, we're going to hang out.
And let's go get some waffles.
Anytime, dude.
Awesome. That's all we got, folks. Thanks so much for listening to Pivot Points. You can listen to the Pivot Points Music Cast and more on the Fader app. My name's Seth Beamer, and I'll talk to you soon.